So please join me in welcoming our third storyteller tonight, Rachel Schmidt. Welcome to the stage.
Hi, everyone. I inhale the sweet scent of a fresh new baby's head. I exhale shh, a shushing sound that soothes this teeny body. Inhaling and exhaling, I continue this rhythm as I breathe in my baby and I breathe in my role as her mother. The breath brings space to my belly. My organs relax. My stomach settles down. A smile finds its way home to my mouth as I bask in my ultimate truth. I love being a mom. I loved it the first time it happened in 2016 with my firstborn daughter, Willow. Despite being in the post-birth wreckage that was my body, I found so much joy in breastfeeding and co-sleeping and eye-gazing with my little one. She gave my life meaning. She filled a thirst in me that had been nagging since puberty. When she turned 2, the urge to conceive returned, along with this desire to replicate the joy and grow our family. So late one night, when my husband whispered to me, "Let's make a baby," my heart did a cartwheel, and we were off, trying like crazy to conceive that next little one. I was treating my body like a temple, doing all the yoga and drinking all the water. I was diligently tracking my cycle on an app in my phone and waiting those torturous 2 weeks between ovulation and pregnancy test time. I discovered just how unfair it is that early pregnancy symptoms are the same as premenstrual symptoms. And month after month, I would close my eyes and pray to protect my heart before reading another negative test. But I kept that hope going for almost a year before I finally got that positive pink sign that I had been waiting for. I collapsed in my husband's arms and cried tears of joy. This little spirit I had been calling had finally arrived in my womb. Name lists and due date calculators flooded my mind as I glided through my life where things made sense again. 9 days later, though, everything abruptly stopped making sense when I saw it. One small drop of bright red blood in my panties. I frantically called the obstetrician, and she calmly walked me through the various scenarios. Everything from, it's literally nothing on one end of the spectrum, to here's what to do if you start to miscarry on the other end. Where did I fall on that spectrum? The constriction in my guts told me I was losing this baby. The next 24 hours felt like I was on death row, just waiting for the executioner to call my name. A nurse checked my HCG levels. Sounds were muffled. My arms felt heavy in the air like it was quicksand. I was on my couch when the first wave of pain came. I grabbed my husband's hand and I said, "I can feel it. The miscarriage is starting." "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Nothing," I replied. "Just go to bed. This is something I need to do alone." You see, my husband and I had hunted big game in the Alaskan wilderness. We'd fished in rivers alongside grizzly bears together. We field dressed our own wounds. He knows better than anybody in this world my ability to brave and conquer wilderness. So his gift to me that night was trusting my strength and honoring my request without doubt. I slid my body into the hottest water I could stand, steam rising from the bathtub. I had waited 30 years for this bathtub, my dream tub, jets and all, and it has been my place of refuge, my place to soak away my pain. My zodiac sign is a Cancer. I'm a water element. So here, in my element, in my place of refuge, I surrendered. The pain came in waves, like a mini labor, and my body remembered how to push with each wave. I don't remember how long it lasted because time didn't really exist for me then, but when the pain ceased, I stood up, pulled the plug, and watched the now rose-colored water, along with my last bit of hope for that baby, go down the drain. Stood up, dried off, and went to bed. I did not leave that bed the next day, lying there, cramps, nausea, and a broken heart. The world had absolutely stopped for me. But it apparently kept turning for everybody else. The engineering firm where I worked called to ask, "Where are you?" "Home," I replied. "I had a miscarriage." "Oh," came the reply. "We've heard that's hard. But unfortunately, you don't have sick time to cover this, so you do need to be at work tomorrow. But don't worry, we'll let you borrow your vacation time from next year to cover your time off for today." Yes, because it has been such a vacation over here. A boulder hit my stomach as I realized that my employer had no investment in my health. Me, a 5-year employee who showed up to work every day and worked hard and did it with a smile on my face. But I didn't have the energy to beg. So the next day, I dragged my haggard body out of bed and I went to the office. My wound, still open, still dripping blood. I craved my bed, the blinds closed tight, the white noise loud, a heavy blanket weighing me down. But instead, I overrode my nervous system. I stayed in my cubicle. I billed more hours to the clients. Now, my value to my employer was clear. At the time, my family relied on my income, and I was very focused on the fact that I could not afford to lose that job. What I didn't realize at the time was the thing that I actually couldn't afford to lose was this time to breathe and heal. This became apparent a few days later when I noticed a hot, red lump in my right breast that I recognized as an inflamed milk duct. My breasts were making milk for a baby that would never even exist. I tried to massage it out like I had learned with my first child, but that didn't work. By the time I went to the doctor, it was so infected that she had to cut an incision in my breast and drain the infected abscess. I watched as pus poured out where milk should be. Wrong white substance. The doctor gave me antibiotics for the mastitis and warned me not to push my body so much. Unsure how to not push my body so much, I just kind of forced myself back into my old rhythms. But my body kept screaming at me to slow down. Infections kept popping up in random parts of my body, like my ears and my sinuses. I was on and off antibiotics for months. Not only was my overall health declining, but I was still failing to conceive, which now was an absolute obsession. So I turned to science in the form of a fertility doctor. The poking and prodding began. Blood draws, a transvaginal ultrasound, and ultimately an HSG procedure, which is a painful, unmedicated procedure to check for blockages in the fallopian tubes. Naked from the waist down in a chilly fluorescent hospital room, I grabbed my husband's hand and squeezed as the obstetrician forced imaging dye up through my tubes. She discovered that my right side had a blockage. So going forward, we would only consider ovulation on my left side to be viable. So with this doctor, we made a plan to try intrauterine insemination, or IUI, to get me pregnant. We made the appointment for March 2020, and I put it on the calendar. I finally had a legitimate light at the end of this infertility struggle. Then COVID hit. The hospital called, and the news flashed before me like the headline of a newspaper. All elective procedures canceled until further notice. Then I really crashed. The effects of the pandemic knocked me on my ass. Besides losing that opportunity to make that IUI baby, I also lost childcare for my 4-year-old when her preschool closed due to COVID. She has extreme asthma and had previously been hospitalized with an illness like COVID, so I shielded her carefully at home, where I was also now working full time. All these changes left me feel like I had been swallowed by a blackness, and I was just drowning. Once in a while, I would peek my head up and look around and see women, all of you, struggling to breathe as well. We're all drowning, and nobody knows which way is up, I realized. My company had lost a lot of business, almost overnight due to the pandemic, and they slashed all our salaries 25%. So, I was working full-time at home with a 4-year-old there. I was working harder than ever, but getting paid less than ever. It was just too much. It made no sense. And since it was still so fresh in my mind exactly how little they valued me, I quit. Relieved, but frightened at being unemployed during a pandemic, my depression worsened and led me to severely neglect my body until the point where I realized I needed help. I felt compelled to reach out to a woman I had met years ago, a shaman, an Irish shaman in Bozeman, and she might even be in this building tonight. I went to her studio. It was dark and inviting, adorned with candles and crystals and tuning forks. I lie on a warm table and closed my eyes, and the journey began. The shaman introduced me to the late summer Irish goddess. Together, we walked through a garden, and the goddess showed me how to pull dead plants and toss them aside in order to preserve the soil for the living crops to flourish. In her style, I walked through the garden that was my own life. What was I holding on to that was already dead? Where could I make space in my own life for the living parts of me to flourish? Job, dead. Discard. IUI. Dead. Discard. Miscarriage. Dead. Discard. The goddess gave me permission to let it go, to let it flow out and away. Afterwards at home, I fell into a deep slumber on my couch as my body digested this experience. Hours later, I woke in a pool of blood. I bolted upright, my hands searching my body for injury, but not feeling any pain. What was bleeding? My vagina. It wasn't so much blood as it was red water. I realized this was not my period. There was something wrong. At the damn hospital again, I got a transvaginal ultrasound and a physical exam, and the doctor reported that there was nothing wrong. What? Yes, you're even ovulating on your right side, the blocked one. I never got a medical explanation of what had happened to me that day. Where did all that blood come from? The best explanation I have is my own, which is that through the shamanic journey, I finally learned how to let go of my miscarriage in a very literal way. I finally felt like I had permission to let go, to let it flow out and away, like the goddess said. Later that week, my family and I left town to go camp at a lake with some friends to decompress from all the stress. I took my paddleboard out and brought back a brook trout. I showed the kids how to kill it, bake it, gut it, cook it, and eat it. Their eager little faces devoured every bit of it. This cycle of life and death is so natural that these young children are fascinated by it, not fearful of it. I mean, isn't there a young child in all of us that wants to know what the guts of a fish look like? What the eyeballs feel like? After camping, we were driving home, and I felt a surge of hot blood rush into my uterus. I had felt this before, and I knew what it was. I think I'm pregnant, I said to my husband. He inhaled sharply. Let's get home and take a test. He trusts me, but by this point, he was also pretty good at managing hope. Well, we did, and the test later confirmed it, even though it was on my right side. Even though I had no medical intervention, even though it was just some hot blood, I knew I was pregnant. 9 months later, my last bit of healing arrived. As a new life emerged from my sacred tunnel, I scooped her up and I murmured, "There you are," as I finally got to breathe in my sweet, healthy, perfect baby girl, my Kinley Josephine.